Welcome back to our third episode of DNC Reviews. I'm Arjun, as you know. We also have Hosung and Ronan, and today we will be doing a throwback album review of Yeezus by Kanye West. So, everyone, Yeezus, Kanye, 2013. This is I believe it is his sixth studio album. It released after My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and he did take a little bit of like an experimental sort of route with this one. So, what are you guys' thoughts?
First of all, this is one of his controversial albums and projects he's done. A lot of people have mixed opinions. Like, even OG Kanye fans have, some people don't even like this album.
That is true. Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I've been liking Kanye for the longest time. And when I heard this one for the first time, I think I was a little confused. And I don't think I got it at first. But I think since we decided that we wanted to review this, I think I listened to it like maybe 7 times all the way through, beginning to end. And I think that it wasn't until like the sixth or seventh time that I played it that I like understood it in a way that it was like really enjoyable, you know?
I kind of liked it. Like back in 2013, I didn't really listen to Kanye. I didn't know English at the time. And now when I listen to it, like I really like it. He's being diverse about like how he loves a woman, and also how he's a like God when it comes to rap.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
We'll
was
get to
interesting.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I mean, the feature list, most features aren't on the album track list, but there is one on the third track from God himself. So I'm sure that didn't really go over well with some folks, but you know, it is what
There
it
are
is.
also
Yeah,
other features in other songs with like
yeah,
samples and all that.
yeah. I think he does a good job of like putting everything and everyone's like voices together on a track, like people who I would never even think to work together, like Chief Keef and like Justin Vernon, like two people from completely different parts of like the industry working together on a 5-minute track. It's like it's at first you think it's a little weird, but it works. So cool. Okay, so we can get started going track by track. The first one is On Site, which is track number 1. This is one of the more like loud tracks. I feel like he took a lot of like noise hop, like heavy metal influence in a way. I looked up who produced it with him, and it turns out that Daft Punk has production credits on almost every single song, including this one. So after I read that, you could really hear the sort of like dance hall, sort of dubstep-esque type instrumental in this one. I feel like this as an introduction to the album is great. I wrote down in my notes, I said it sounds like eating like a battery, if that makes any sense. Like it's like as soon as you hit play, it's like I thought that my speakers were like broken because the 808s and like the synths were so distorted, and like it was such a weird feeling. Like my ears sort of like they weren't used to that kind of beat. So I was wondering what you guys thought about like the introduction, how it felt like an introduction to the album, like the beat, the production value.
I think the beat was very interesting. Like it was fuzzy, electronic, and it like slowly transitioned into like the introduction. And yeah, I also think it's a perfect opener for the album. He managed to rap as obnoxious as the beat. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I also think like Kanye knew that this was going to be something different to his other stuff, so I feel like he needed to tell the listeners straight off from the intro that this is something different. So he kind of exaggerated that like really loud tone, and by doing that, like he's really telling the message like this is different.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But like the bars in here are like ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like some of the bars in here, like when I first heard it, ever like I would like laugh, but then I would think like people would get like canceled for saying like some of the bars that he's saying. Like in 2020, it's just weird to think about. Like this wouldn't get him canceled, but I thought like one of the funnier bars he said in the beginning, like literally the first bar, he says, "Yeezy season approaching, whatever you're hearing," which I think is him just saying like, you, just like, just listen to what I'm putting out for months, and if you get sick of it, you can go on with your day, go on doing whatever you want. But for right now, like it's Yeezy season, you have to get with it. Like this is my time, you know. I think that that's great as a part of, as it adds to the overall theme of him being like egotistic, but he's also like looking back on his past and seeing where he is now in terms of like his like luxury style of living. He also says he says like bars like, "We're gonna get this shaking like Parkinson's," which is ridiculous. He says she got more people off than Cochran, like referring to the OJ case. And I think one of my favorite parts of the whole song, and maybe like one of the highlights and sort of best parts of the album due to pure shock value, was when he's like, "How much do I not give a," and then he goes straight into like no transition into this beautiful soul sample, this old R&B sample with like this kid choir for like 5 seconds. And when I was listening to it, I was like we went from this heavy trashy beat to this beautiful, like it sounded like spring, like a bunch of flowers, a bunch of kids playing in a field for 5 seconds, and then it just cuts back to the beat, and I'm like, no, I want to go back to that to that sample, please. It's so much nicer than this. And I feel like that was his way of saying like, I could do this, I could make beautiful music, but that's just not what I'm on right now. So I think that him saying like, I could do so many things, I'm so like versatile, but I can still make you enjoy the music and think, and I keep you on your toes by switching the beat, the sample, the tone, the key, my lyrics. It's just like, he's not only is he exposing his fans for enjoying all the music that he makes, but he's also just showing off who he is as a producer and as like an artist.
Yeah, I noticed, like, if you listen to Yeezy, you definitely know he's not trying to make hits or anything. His main purpose of this album is to spread the story and spread the message. Something I noticed, like, the duality between, like, this, I call it, like, the cold sound with, like, the electronic music and all that. Kind of, like, by using electronic music, it's kind of emotionless and has, like, no soul. And then he brings this, like, really bright and like warm like choir sample, and that kind of reflects with his bipolar, how Kanye's bipolar, how like he could really have two different split personalities, and that reflects on the song, I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that. That's a good point. Yeah, I think that the whole album sort of shows that, you know. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, I just wrote down, thought my speakers were like broken, egotistic asshole version of Kanye is shining through. But at the end of the day, On Site serves its purpose as like a little like appetizer to the whole album. So I think it does a great job at that. Moving on, we have track 2, which is Black Skinhead. This is one of my favorites on the album. It's one of the more like mainstream cuts from the album. I think most people have heard it. Like, first thing I wrote down was like, this song is undeniably just raw and aggressive. He's just doing his thing. He's not using like traditional trap drums. He's using these sort of, I want to say like African drums, or like these like traditional drums like from like an actual like live kit, and it's sounding like it's like constantly like building up to something. I wrote down like just purely based on the instrumental, it's the small things that really matter with this album. For example, he like, you know, in the instrumental, how like there's like that like syncopated like rhythmic like breath in the background, like in your ear, like in both ears. I feel like if that were taken away, the energy of the track would be like super low. Even if he's like rapping his ass off and he's screaming and he's like going off, I think it's like every small thing like squished together in one beat just makes it super energetic.
Well, Kanye was originally a beat maker, so he always takes his drums and his like all the percussion parts really seriously. So that was kind of expected of him, and I really like the breath. And I feel like if the song used like, you know, normal 808s and all that, it'll be really like the message he's trying to portray like and spread is going to be really like shallow and not that good. Whereas by using those I think they're African toms or whatever, but that really like changed the tone.
Do you want to explain it?
No, you can do it. Or
Okay. Well, everyone, it seems that Ronan's Wi-Fi decided to pull a fast one on him. So, yeah, he's no longer with us. That's all that you need to know.
All right, so what I was saying was that how Kanye, if he used the 808 drums, the message he was trying to tell would be really shallow, and the song would be treated like just like a normal song. But by
Yeah.
using the African toms, he really conveyed his message and changed the song into something different.
Yeah, I agree. I think like one thing I wrote down was like this song is just like screaming at me like I can do whatever the hell I want whenever I want, and there's nothing that you can do to stop me, and if you try to stop me, something bad is going to happen. Like it's just like that raw aggressive energy. The beat smacks the whole time. Like there's a nice chorus. I like it makes sense that this was track number 2 on the album. Like you notice that like every track 2 on every album is like the mainstream song or like the banger. Like this one is a certified banger. So this is great. I also think that it's a good segue into the third track, I Am a God, because he's like he started with On Sight where he established that egotistic energy. On Black Skinhead, he's sort of like developing that idea. He's like furthering his idea by just saying all these blasphemous things, and then that transitions into I Am a God where he's like peak level like Kanye, you know?
yeah, I also like the way he wrote his lyrics. From the first line, he's like, "For my theme song," which he makes it sound like he's like the super villain or the superhero, and then it really describes how he can be savage to people that hate him. You know?
Yeah. That also ties in with what Ronan just said with the whole superhero, supervillain. It's sort of like the duality of Kanye. Like maybe in his eyes he's the superhero, but in the rest of the world's eyes he's the supervillain, you know? Or maybe it's the other way around, depending on who his fans are.
Yeah, I saw like an interview that said how Kanye used Yeezus as a way to like say that even people as dark as like the devil or like people super evil can be saved by God and be become like go with the light. And I think yeah, you could really notice that with this song. And
Yeah, I feel
and then
like
you
yeah.
also
Go,
in the
sorry.
previous song with like the two different moods in like the songs.
Yeah, I feel like adding on to that, like the whole aesthetic of this album is like industrial, black and white, very like moody, bleak. So I think that sort of adds to that. All right, track 3. This is probably the most infamous track on here, if I'm not mistaken. I Am a God, featuring God himself. Um, yeah, the first thing I wrote down was the feature on the song is God, which is just like he's literally just trying to provoke people, but I'm here for it because let me just say the production on here is incredible. Like the whole like ominous, strange, mysterious feel to the song. And then there's like a pulsing, like sort of like 808 type stuff happening in both of your ears at the same time. And then there's like that vocal sample that keeps coming in. It's not on beat. I kept checking if it was on beat. It's never on beat. It's always like random, but it just meshes well with everything else. And it just creates like this sort of this spacey, shadowy atmosphere. Like when I was thinking about this song, I thought that like this is what like Kanye is walking out to. You know, like if Kanye was like a boxer or like a wrestler, he would play I Am a God and just walk out because that's sort of the embodiment of who he was at the time. And now he's all about Jesus Christ. So that's interesting.
And you
Um
know, you talked about Boxer, right?
yeah.
That kind of reminds me of his concerts. Like if you see his concerts and he's like walking onto the stage, it looks like he's like going into like a boxing ring and he's ready to put on a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's has so much power, you know, like
Yeah.
with the crowd. So he can do whatever he wants and people will go nuts.
Yeah, and something that I like with Kanye is he like makes his songs also for his concerts and his performances. Like his visual performances and concerts, they really connect with the songs that he produces. And sometimes I wonder whether he thinks about like the song first or the performance first.
Hmm, that's a
I
good
think it's
point.
the performance because like I've seen interviews where like he gets so angry when like someone messes up in the performance or whatever. And so he really envisions this like perfect executed like performance, and I think then the song comes with it.
Yeah, I think he's much smarter than people say that he is. He thinks very deeply about all of
Yeah.
this. He cares more about his craft than his image, you know? Um, but then again, he's calling himself God. The bars are there, flow is aggressive, his voice is clear, but the screaming in the middle of the track for like a minute, that kind of threw me off a little bit. But I also think it was super dope. Not from like, oh, this sounds good, but oh, this totally adds to his whole like God character that he's playing in this album. Like Kanye is not Kanye throughout this entire album. Kanye is playing this like as you said, Vernon, like this like evil villain type version of himself. And so I think that that totally adds to him like evolving into like his like final form. And then he's talking to Jesus in the track. He's like, I just talked to Jesus. He said, "What's up, Yeezus?" Is like, "Shit, I'm chilling." So it's like he's putting himself up there with gods. So he's having like a casual conversation. Ridiculous. I don't know. Like, okay, it's fire. I think it's great. He's saying, I'm not a human. Deal with it." So I think it just works with the whole album. You know.
I think this track was like targeted on one person at the time. I think it was, I think he was like invited to like this fashion show or something, and then some people there didn't want him there.
Mm.
I'm not
Oh
sure.
yeah,
I
there.
didn't.
I remember back in like 2013, how Kanye tried to go into the fashion industry and try to like try fashion, right? But all these fashion designers were like, "No, Kanye, stick to music."
Yeah,
And I think he's talking about that.
Bro, the one thing people should never do is make Kanye mad, man.
yeah, yeah.
No, no,
Because
we
he's gonna
should.
drop.
We should. That he's about to drop some bangers.
Bro, yeah, oh my god. Like, this is Kanye just, like, screaming at everyone who ever hated him and just saying, like, F you. Like, this is my world, you know?
Wait, just for clarification,
Sure.
is Yeezus like the first time where Kanye started to talk about like Jesus and God and all that?
I think he first mentioned God on Jesus Walks
Oh,
on
right.
College Dropout. But then, like,
But
it was sort of scarce after that.
Yeah.
New Slaves. This is top 2 on the album.
Yeah.
Facts.
Lyrically, this song is, there's so much to unpack. Lyrically, this song is incredible. The production is amazing. That synth in the beat is iconic. He's talking about like this whole idea of new slaves, so many different meanings, how black people used to be the only slaves, and he's saying like now because material objects are what everyone values, everyone's a slave, or everyone can be like a figurative slave. I thought that was super interesting, like listening to this song. He's saying it doesn't matter who you are, what background you come from, like money is being used against you, and it is controlling you in a way where you are a new slave, buying expensive shit just to conform with people. That's you being a figurative like slave, like not comparing it to like slavery, but that's you being like a sheep, you know? He's saying in this modern age where material things are highly valued, anyone is a sheep, everyone is a sheep. They're just trying to follow what's cool. And I think that him being the person who makes stuff cool, this is a big like statement, you know? I mean, he literally says, "I'd rather be a dick than a swallower," which sort of encapsulates the whole entire idea that I was trying to say. Like, he's the leader of this new movement of I get to decide what's cool and you follow it blindly. And this is him sort of just making a commentary about that, you know?
The
Yeah,
other slave he
oh,
talks
let's
about
go.
is like how black people are in prison are still doing labor jobs and they're still stuck in like the slave system where they're forced to work. And I don't know if it's true or not, but it said somewhere where there are more black people in prison working labor jobs than slaves in like the 1800s.
Mm.
I read that
Yeah,
somewhere.
I think that's interesting because like it just goes along with what everyone's talking about today with the 13th Amendment. Like slavery's banned, but if you're imprisoned and it's like punishment for a crime, then it's allowed. And I think that first of all it's ridiculous, but second of all it's like the fact that Kanye's sort of tying in all these more adult themes into this album is just I think it's great. One of the lines I love is he saying like they throwing contracts at me and he's like they know that we can't read. So it's saying how he's sort of like being like changed and controlled by his like by the music industry, and they think, oh, he's just like a black kid from Chicago. He's so like naive, he doesn't know anything, and therefore we're gonna exploit him. We're gonna make millions of dollars off of this kid, and we're not gonna care about him anymore. This is him saying like, I know what you're doing. Like I'm not stupid. And the outro to this track, I wrote in all caps. This is it's ridiculous how good this outro is. Like this is one of the best samples I have ever heard Kanye use. And his auto-tune singing in the background, which is usually really annoying, is incredible. This outro, it's just beautiful. It's the highlight on the album for me. Like the best moment on the album. It's like a piece of art. It's just a great piece of production matched with vocal mixing, matched with Kanye, and the sample choice is just amazing. I wanted to know your thoughts on the outro on the track. All right, so now we're gonna listen to the outro of New Slaves because the other two people who are part of this podcast forgot about it. So we're gonna refresh their memory. All right, let's go. I told y'all, man.
Sounds beautiful.
I don't know if you
I'm,
guys noticed
yeah.
Arjun and I, but we both just kind of fell back.
I don't care if we talk about this outro for like we've been talking about it for like 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but like this is peak Kanye. That outro, when I heard it for the first time, I don't know what it was, but it just brought me back to like a certain like time, or like I was thinking about someone, or like a memory that I had in the past. And it's just like listening to that, it's like that could literally be on like the soundtrack to my life because it's just so distinct, it's so beautiful, it's so nostalgic. It's highlight on the album for me. All right, Hold My Liquor. I love this song. I f***ing love this song. Maybe top 3 all-time Kanye for me. A little bit of a heavy statement, but I love it so much. Justin Vernon harmonizing with Chief Keef. Literally the last thing I would ever want on an album ever. It works so well. Chief Keef, the auto tune is cranked all the way up, and he's just crooning, but it works so well. These can't handle me, they can't control me. Adds to the theme from the very beginning. Like there's like this beat that sort of sounds like a heartbeat. Like in the back, it's like it never stops throughout the entire track. And it's just like same thing with Black Skinhead. It just keeps you going. It keeps the energy up. It keeps you in suspense of what's gonna happen next. And I think that's one of the best things that Kanye does as an artist. He always leaves you saying, "Oh, like what is he gonna do now? What's happening? Where are we going with this?" So I think this track, and again the outro. So there's one guitar. The guitar solo lasts like a minute and 30 seconds. There's the main melody is in one ear, and the higher harmony is in the other ear, and they're playing at the same time, and it is ridiculous. It's literally like a New Slaves type outro part 2. I listen to this song every day on my way to school on the bus just so I could like transcend before I go to school. Musically, this is some of Kanye's best work, and great track.
I see like a mood change. Like before he was all like I don't care. Here I see kind of an emotional side and kind of that egotistical character that he was developing kind of topple over and changing.
Yeah, since this was like his emotional track in the album, I think this is like the song that would sound better if you listen to it at 3 a.m., as we talked about in the previous episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, like his autotune sounds really nice. The way he lets the beat go along at the end, it's just musically really good.
That's a really good point, Hosong. I can just see myself staring at the ceiling on a Friday night, just listening to this.
Yeah.
Vibes.
Exactly. Like, I wrote on my notes for this track, I am floating right now. And I said, this is the best track on the album. It's not even close. I just think as a track, even though New Slave's amazing, this track is just, I don't even know what to say. It's amazing. Moving on, I'm In It, the worst song on the album. We are greeted with moans as soon as the beat drops. Obviously it's about sex. The production is good. The bars are just like, what are you doing? I don't even want to say it. It's just so unholy. Go ahead.
Isn't that kind of not genius, but sometimes I notice Kanye deliberately choosing terrible lyrics to portray this character. Like he talked about New Slaves. Maybe he wants to portray like a superficial person, kind of like this person that doesn't care about anything. All he wants is like the material wealth and the fame and the pleasure. And maybe that's why in this case he's like, I guess, obsessed with his woman, and all he cares about is like the sex. And maybe that's the character he's trying to play.
I think in terms of that, I think in that case the track works well. I just think for like me personally, it's not my favorite track on here. I can't get over how weird everything sounds on this track. It works for the character, absolutely. Like, I feel like in that way it is genius. I definitely do agree with you. I think Kanye is on this album, he was just like a different beast. This is after Amber Rose. This is when he started being with Kim Kardashian. So I think that this is him sort of shifting his perspective. And the media hated Kanye. The media hated Kanye in from 2010 and 2013 because like the Taylor Swift incident, which made him drop My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, arguably his best album, one of the greatest albums of all time. And they just continued to hate him because he kept saying all these blasphemous statements. So not only is this album like a statement piece where he's saying, I don't care what you think, my album is going to sell and I'm going to go number one whether you like it or not. I just think that adding to his character, as you said, Ronan, is just, it's quite genius. He knows exactly what he's doing. Everything is intentional. Like, this is not just a collection of 10 tracks. This is, you could say it's just one cohesive track of Kanye's just talking back to these people who are talking down on him. Another great outro on this track. I said like fits with the theme of Kanye saying crazy stuff, doing whatever he wants because he knows people will like it, which is weird, but it works.
I don't know
Blood
if
on
it's
the Leaves.
just me, but
Yeah.
I low-key enjoyed the beat in this song. The Well of the Woman. It's very unusual, but I could see like XXX Tentacion using that beat. But it was very interesting. He was just being, I guess.
Yeah. But like, I think that like many artists are afraid to express feelings about sex and stuff because it's not mainstream. I agree with you, Hosong. I think that the production on this whole album is just amazing. It's top quality, and he you can tell that he really worked hard on it. Speaking of production, Blood on the Leaves. The sample in this song is actually a song that I like. For some reason, I like heard last year. We were reading some book at school, Strange Fruit, referring to the lynching of black people during like that Jim Crow era when they were heavily discriminated against, and it was very explicit. You have to be very careful with that sample because there's a lot that goes behind it, but I think that he did a really good job. The singing and the autotune on this track is great. It's a very old, dated sample with these very modern dance hall dubstep lyrics. There's heavy horns, which I loved. And it just creates this sort of an entrancing feeling. I feel like the dubstep type stuff on the chorus, when he's like, we could have been somebody, and then like he's like, so let's get on with it. And then it drops into these crazy horns in both of your ears. Everything is loud and crazy. And I just think that we've never heard something like that from Kanye. And I think that that's the first time when I heard this track on my first listen when we were about to review it. This is the first time when I was like, okay, he's actually not just doing this experimental stuff for the sake of being experimental. This was very intentional, and this album and this song just adds to the theme of Vernon. He said that that towards the end of the album, these like last few tracks, like he started super strong, raw energy, but now he's sort of like pulling himself back and saying like, hold up, like let's just like chill out for a second. But he's not like stopping. He's still saying all this crazy stuff. He's being very descriptive with his lyrics, but he's just not as hard as he was in the first few tracks. So I just think that like Ronan, you made a really good point with like the duality, and Hosung, you added to it with like the villain stuff. And I just think that like through every single track, this theme shines through, and he's doing his damn thing. Like he's doing his job.
But I have a question for you guys. Why do you think he chose the strange fruit sample for this song?
I was thinking about that for a while, but I couldn't really figure it out. It's a very like dense sample, but I think he used it to contrast his whole like new slaves thing. This whole idea of everyone's a new slave. There's like rich people racism and there's broke people racism, and he's on the rich end of that spectrum, but he still deals with it. Well, I don't know exactly what he's trying to say, but I know that he's going for the mood of that was racism, like people hanging off of trees back then, and this is what I'm going through now, and look at how they compare. I think that's what he's trying to say. This album could drop today or tomorrow, and it would still be like, it would still fit.
So what I
Yeah.
thought why you used the sample is because, well, one of the lyrics is like, that Nina Simone keeps saying is strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. I think the poplar tree has like very beautiful flowers. In the original song, she used it so like you see like this horrible image of this man being hanged, but then right next to it you have like a beautiful beautiful flowers around it. So, and in the song he keeps talking about how like his like women he's been with like always kind of trick him and use him and make him feel terribly. It kind of reflects that the imagery in the sample reflects on how like the women trick him, where like these beautiful women and these flowers, they kind of lure him in, and he's like, but then he falls into the trap, and then he ends up being with the beautiful with a beauty, but he's like also dead inside. I don't know.
That's really good because now he's with Kim K, so it makes sense. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I think when you think about that, it sort of brings me to like, I don't know, it made me think about To Pimp a Butterfly when you were saying that, because like the whole idea of To Pimp a Butterfly, like what the title means is like there's this like butterfly and like a caterpillar, and then it evolves into a butterfly, and it's very beautiful, and it's full of like purity, and people are trying to like pimp it out and try to exploit it, and all of these external influences from like gang violence and all these terrible things sort of like torture it in a way and sort of take away all of the purity and beauty that it once had. Yeah, so I think that whole idea of holding something negative and bleak and dead next to something that's beautiful and pure and sort of mixing the two, I just think that it just gives listeners a lot to think about.
That could be like reflecting on like how Kanye was dating all these supermodels. Like it might seem beautiful, it might say like, oh, Kanye's so lucky, but inside, like really, he's like dead, he's like cold.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Ronan. Hosung, do you have any thoughts on the track or what Ronan just said?
Yeah, I was impressed by what Ronan said. That was really good.
Ronan just went off just now.
Dropping facts today, bro.
Ronan came prepared. We got Guilt Trip next up, featuring the great Kid Cudi. Production is crazy. Like, you know how like when you first played the song and there's like that like watery like ripple effect with the synth, and it's like fading in and out, but it's phasing at the same time. And then Kanye comes in with his autotune. I think Kanye with autotune works really well, by the way. And then I think towards the end, I was getting a little bit bored of the track, but then all of a sudden I hear Kid Cudi like doing his hums, and I was like, no way, he's on this track. And then after that, I was like this is top 3 on the album. I think Guilt Trip is. I think the lyrics are great. I think the beat, as like through the whole album, the beats are just amazing. These are beats that people would dream of making. And Kid Cudi's feature, his voice is just unmatched. I think that no one else could have done what he did on the track. No one else could bring that same vibe to the track.
Oh, I just noticed that the hook, I think, is in Jamaican. I'm not sure, but it was used in the Pusha T song as well. Like, there's like a Pusha T song with Interestingly, Travis Scott's part of the production team on this song. And Travis was also on the song with Pusha T, with the hook, and that.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting to me.
No, that is interesting. I think that, like he's like recruiting all these producers, like for Blood on the Leaves, for that dubstep part, he like recruited some like German or some like European artists to work on the chorus. He has Travis Scott. He has Daft Punk, who we all know work on like sort of like dance, like electronic, like poppy music. Like this is when Travis Scott was a nobody, 2013. Like I just think that the fact that Kanye, like usually Kanye is like, I'm the only producer on this album, along with like Mike Dean, you know, but now he's like reaching out to all these other people to achieve and get inspiration for these sounds that he cannot make on his own. Like you can tell that this album was not a solo effort. Like he had to work and reach out to many people in order to make these sounds. Because I cannot imagine someone sitting in a studio and like making something like this on his own with no help. Like reaching out to other artists is always a great thing that like any artist can do. So I'm glad that I feel like if he tried to pull this off by himself, it would have been really bad and it would have been really like trashy. Send It Up is the next song. I like the feature, King Louis. Shout out to everyone from Chicago, you know? He's giving everyone a little bit of shine time, which I like. And the production is just consistent. Like, the bars are just straight flexing. So, there's not really much to say there. But I don't want to say it's like an extra, like, filler track. But it works with the album.
I feel like the production really, like, went over than the lyrics. Like, the siren sounds really makes him sound like he's entering something or he's beginning something. So, yeah, it was a good song. But not really remarkable.
It was alright. But like the thing about like if that song was on someone else's album, it would be like the best song. But just the fact that it's on this album, it's like worst 3.
Yeah. I have a question for you guys.
Yeah, sure.
So I was wondering why he put this song on, and do you guys think that Yeezus is kind of like a story of how Kanye became Yeezus? Because then that might make sense why he has a song, because he wants to include his Chicago background.
Yeah, I think that you could be right. But you have to ask the question, like, who is, like, Yeezus compared to Kanye?
That's a tough question.
Like, who is he? Like...
He has so many names for himself. He has, like, so he has Kanye West, and then he has Ye, and then Yeezus, and then Yeezy.
God, like someone, like I was talking to my friend about him, and then he just one time like he just like called him West. I was like, West. I had no idea who he was talking about. He's like, bro, Kanye, and I was like, all right. But yeah, I kind of like what you're saying. Like he has many like personas, personalities. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely shining through. He's tapping into his roots, giving King Louis a feature. I don't know where he is right now, but you know, shout out. To close off the album, we have Bound 2, which is an amazing track. An amazing way to end the album. The sample is beautiful. The bars are so personal. His flow is great. The change of tone with the instrumental is amazing. But I have a question. Like, does it fit with the rest of the album? It works, but it's so different production-wise. And in all the other songs, he's like, I'm flexing, I'm talking my shit, I can do whatever I want. And in this song, he's talking about Kim, obviously. It's very personal. He's like admitting to like his soft side. He's admitting to his mistakes. And he's like, I will improve myself. I will be better for you. Because I want this relationship to work out, which I think is just a beautiful thing. I think that this song is, I mean, if we're going with what Ronan said about how this whole album's like a story arc, like you start from the beginning, we get introduced to who Kanye is, or like this like Yeezus character with On Sight. We're like, whoa, this is kind of crazy. We go up, we hit the peak at New Slaves or I Am a God, and we start to go down with Hold My Liquor, we start to go down with Blood on the Leaves, and we end sort of back to where he was. Like you're on the same level, like you passed the arc, you're on the same level, but you're different because you experienced everything along the way. Is this like a changed Kanye, or is this the same old guy?
My personal opinion with this song is I feel like it didn't conclude the album properly. And I was like, wait, this doesn't really feel like an ending. But then what that told me was that might be purposeful, and the reason why he didn't end it properly is because the legacy of Yeezus continues.
Bro, you're dropping all these heavy statements, man.
Yeah.
like every time like you say something, I have to like think for like a minute, be like, think about.
I'm kind of like a Yeezy. Actually, I shouldn't. The Japanese Yeezy.
I think that that's absolutely right. I mean, if we're not thinking of it as an ending, it's just sort of like that's the end of this chapter of this character. Because the next album after this is The Life of Pablo, and he's very different. Like in this album, he's like, it's me against the world, and in The Life of Pablo, he was like, I'm with my friends, I'm with Kid Cudi, Pusha T, Chance the Rapper. I'm with all my friends, and we're just gonna have a good time and make great sounding soulful music. I think Yeezus ended in before the Life of Pablo, but it definitely continued after this album, after he dropped it. That whole character, the persona, him like yelling at TMZ, the press, everything. But yeah, I think that's a really good point, Ronan. You're like 3 for 3.
Can I go 4 for 4?
Oh yeah, go ahead, bro.
All right, I'm about to drop some heat. Like something that I noticed with Kanye albums is they're kind of like movie trilogies. Like it reminds me of Star Wars, where like each album is a different chapter, but it's chronological. But the start of the album is like always in the middle of something. Like if you guys remember Star Wars movies, when the next one comes out, it's not a continuation straight after the end of the previous one. It just starts from like somewhere random that you don't like really know, and then you start to figure out it's like, oh, we're here now and this is what's going on. And then the movie ends, but the story's not over. Dude. I'll give you guys
wait, hold on. It's like yeah, I think that totally makes sense. Like
my brain's firing today.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Go on.
So college dropout, late registration, graduation. That's trilogy 1. 808s, Fantasy, Yeezus. That's 2. Pablo, Yay, and Jesus is King. That makes so much sense. That actually makes a lot of sense. Because first trilogy, yeah.
Maybe? What's the
Part two.
Jesus is King 2.
Oh, stop.
Gospel choir type beat. First trilogy is like old school Kanye. I'm getting my feet wet in the industry. I'm going straight bars. My production is amazing. Old school, high pitched samples, like classic Kanye. Second bit is like I'm getting a little bit more experimental. I'm dropping straight heat. Third one is like I'm tapping into like now, like when you enter the post Yeezus period, that third trilogy, like people have to understand, like Kanye is a father now. Like he has kids, he has a family, he has a good home life. So he's like a changed person. I think he no longer values these material goods. I think he's changed not only because he like found Jesus or whatever, but he like I don't know what it's like obviously, but he's like a father now. I want to set a good example for my kids. So I'm going to do what I can to be the person that I want them to be and be the father figure. So I think that in terms of the trilogy stuff that Ronan was talking about, I think that it checks out. So you are now 4 for 4. Good job.
Can I go? No, I'm just. Can I go 5-5?
Yo.
Or do you guys need a mental break?
I mean. All right, go ahead. I think I'm ready.
All right, you ready? So I mean, Kanye. I mean, you could really, kind of like a book. You can like dissect stories in many different ways, but a connection I found with the whole storyline with Yeezus is like an average hip hop, like it back in the day, like maybe like in the 2000s, but like hip hop, like a rapper's career's journey. Like back in the 2000s, it was still kind of this time where people had to like rappers had to act tough. Like nowadays, you could be kind of like an emo rapper or a singing melodic rapper.
Like Lil Uzi Vert.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
back in the day, yeah, like 50 Cents and like kind of these tough guys, and in order to be a rapper, you had to be tough. And then like people had to, I don't know if it was real or not, but people had to put on this character or persona that they're this tough rapper. But then as they go along through their career, they kind of change and they kind of become more of themselves. And I think the way like the storyline in Yeezus is kind of similar to like a rapper's journey in their career.
He starts off as something that he's not, and he
Yeah.
finishes it with sort of like like collecting himself and
Yeah.
just like being content.
Yeah, that's why like he puts a song in about he includes his backgrounds about Chicago, because that's Kanye discovering his backgrounds to truly find himself again. And then in Bound 2, he's like, I found myself and I found what's good for me.
I think Ronan's 5 for 5, boys.
He did it.
All right, overall thoughts on the album, and we will finally be giving our ratings. This is the first ever album review on the podcast, so this is kind of a big deal. So, Hosong, do you want to start? Final thoughts on the album, just a few words.
Yeah, I think it was very interesting how he did an experiment with different styles in the album. And for me, I'll give a solid 6.5 out of 10.
Okay.
Or 6. Or 6. Yeah, for me. Because I really like the productions for all the songs, but some of the like rap parts of the tracks were quite questionable. Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, I guess I can go next. This is a top 3 Kanye album in my opinion. Very like controversial, as Ronan said, but like some hate it, some love it, but I just love it so much. I don't know why. I think I can play, like, it's only 10 tracks. It's not bloated at all. There's no extra filler or like BS in the track list, and every song has like something amazing that I can look forward to. And I think that like the production is just, as you said, it's incredible. Like I think people take for granted what good production can be and what it sounds like, because they're so used to like these trappy, like really like trashy beats. Like, but this production is so forward thinking and so dense that I would never get bored of listening to this album, and that rarely ever happens. I rarely can ever listen to an album from front to back without skipping or pausing and get the same rush of excitement and energy every single time whenever the New Slaves outro comes on, or the guitar solo on Hold My Liquor, or the chorus on Blood on the Leaves, or Kid Cudi's verse on Guilt Trip. It's just I still get that same feeling of excitement and just energy, and I just think like many of the songs on this album are just timeless. I think like lyrically, I agree with you, Hosong. I think that it's a little off-putting and it's a little here and there, but I kind of like how trashy it is. Like he's saying all this crazy stuff, but I'm like, and he's like saying all like this like stuff about sex, money, drugs, him being like a god, and just me listening to that, I'm like, this is dope, you know? Like, for someone to finally, like, not like finally, but for someone to who has as high a status as Kanye West to come out and say, I don't care what you think, I'm basically like God. I'm the best musician alive. I don't care what you say, and here's why. And I think that whole attitude is something I I would want to hear throughout my whole life, you know? If I'm about to give a presentation or a speech or something, I'm putting on like Black Skinhead. Like, if I'm like, there's a song for every mood. Kanye just goes off on the production. His bars are just, they're a little off-putting, but I love them. The production, amazing. I mean, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. My overall score is a 9. A light to decent 9. I was thinking about giving it a 9.5, but I was like, let's just like chill out for a second. but I think like this is a solid 9, top 3 in Kanye's discography, and he just did his thing. So yeah, Ronan, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, this album definitely has a really strong message, a very unique message, and something like that I noticed is if you like release like a movie or something, or like a video that goes with every single song, and like you just play, right, I think that would be amazing. And if I listen to this live while Kanye is performing, it would be amazing. However, although it has really very good storylines and messages, I it like some of these songs, like the reason why New Slaves a lot of people like is because it has a really catchy melody, and like so and some of the songs that Kanye has some good messages and all that, but I wouldn't listen to it more than 5 times. Like I wouldn't put it in a playlist or whatever. Even though like while keeping the same experimental and like keeping it raw with the message and all that, if he included more of like a melody or something that allows the person to listen to it more and more. First of all, if you use a melody that makes your message more catchy and more for more people to remember, and he doesn't do that in some of the songs. So he, in a way, like even if you get the message, it won't stay with you because you're not listening to it over and over. So because of that, I'm giving Yeezus a 7.5.
That is respectable. That's better than a 6. No, I'm kidding.
Down.
No, I'm kidding. I'm not hating. I'm just like, all right. I think that's totally fair. I mean, we pretty much did everything that we planned to do. Oh, we do have a special announcement.
Oh
that
yeah.
Hosung wanted to make
Quick
an hour ago.
Yeah. Vernon, who was our special guest in our last episode, will be part of our channel/podcast from now on. Also, we'll be doing episodes where we invite guests from all over the world to interview them about music, events, and more. So stay tuned.
It will be shorter than an hour. So
for sure.
Yeah. So look forward to that. Cool. Do we have any final thoughts before we close out the review?
Well, in the middle we had some technical issues, but let's just hope that doesn't really affect the final product of the video and the
hopefully
audio, so.
Hopefully it's still enjoyable. We did put a lot of work into this. We had to listen to the album like a ton of times. You guys have no idea. Take a lot of notes, look at the lyrics, look at the producer credits, look at interviews, stories. I mean, we did our damn thing, you know? Ronan came through, was super philosophical today, super deep. I like it. I like the energy. So everyone look forward to interviews. We're going to do more throwback reviews, regular reviews once the new music comes out. We might even do single track reviews where we just listen to one song and just talk about it. Any new releases, like a Snow on the Bluff type video. But yeah, we just look forward to keep doing this through the whole summer and hopefully during the school year, the upcoming school year. And yeah, just look forward to new content, new videos. Spotify. We're on Apple Music or iTunes rather now. We're officially on there. We already have 2 episodes up, so be sure to go look at that. Yeah, subscribe, like the video. We appreciate all comments, any engagement. Tell your friends, and yeah, that closes out the Yeezus review, where we just looked at Yeezus by Kanye West and talked about some other stuff. So yeah, thanks. I be flyer than a bitch, I be flyer than a bitch. Please don't talk down on me, got pistola on my hip. I be flyer than a bitch, I be flyer.